Hey everybody. A couple minutes early here. It's Tuesday afternoon. I was supposed to start at 3:30. I just saw it's 3:28 or so. So we'll go ahead and get started. My computer is not cooperating. Let me get this all set up correctly. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. So today I thought that I would talk about reasons not to talk to the police without a lawyer. Um, it would seem to me that this should be obvious enough, but you'd be surprised how often I get calls with someone wanting to be questioned by the police and the police trying to set up an appointment to do so, and then they call me and say, should I talk to them? And so the answer is 99% of the time, no. You have the right to remain silent, and almost always you should exercise that right. Now, to be clear, what we're talking about here is when you're a suspect. Obviously, you need to talk to the police if you're a victim, and you don't need a lawyer to speak to the police if you're a victim of a crime. But if you find yourself a suspect, then yes, you want to have a lawyer. So some of the reasons are, if you're a suspect, what they're trying to do is get evidence against you. And, you can't, I guess it's some people's natural instinct to think they can talk themselves out of a situation. And when it's a police matter, let me assure you that you cannot. Most of the time, all the time in felony cases, it's not even the officer's choice to make an arrest or accept charges. The officers have to call the DA's office intake desk and tell whoever's doing intake duty, a felony prosecutor, what happened, what the circumstances are, and then that felony prosecutor will authorize charges and the officer will effect an arrest. It's not like out on the street the officer gets to decide, I'm going to arrest this guy, but I'm not going to arrest that guy. It just doesn't work like that. So you're not going to be able to talk yourself out of the situation if you find yourself a suspect. So speaking to the officers is really going to do nothing but A, give them the opportunity to try and dig information out of you, and B, it's going to lock you down to a story if you tell one that we cannot later change. It's very difficult to do that. So you really never want to speak to the police. Another reason is because the police are allowed to lie to you. You've seen on movies where they'll lie to a suspect and tell them they have DNA or they have hair or, some evidence linking when they really don't have it, and then the person ends up confessing. It's long-standing tradition upheld by the Supreme Court. The police can lie to you when they are questioning you and try to get information out of you. So obviously that's a tactic that they use, and you don't ever know. So if they're questioning you and your friend, and they're telling you that your friend's in the other room and he's already said that you did X, Y, and Z, they could be lying to you. You shouldn't even be at that point. At every point that they try to speak to you, you should demand an attorney. I once had a case, this is 100% true. I watched the body cam, and they want to question my client, and they have him in the car already. An officer opens the back door and says, "We want to talk to you." He says, "Get my lawyer down here and I'll talk to you right now." No, man, we just want to talk to you for a second. My client responded, "Get my lawyer down here. Mark Diaz is his name. If you bring me my phone, his cell phone's in my cell phone, I'll call him right now. We'll see if he'll come right now." Well, of course, the cops never called me or never let him call me because they didn't want him to lawyer up. We ended up getting that case dismissed because he had clearly invoked his right to counsel, and the police officers tried to ignore it. But you know, you have the right to remain silent, and you absolutely should remain silent. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to be ugly about it, that you need to be disrespectful about it. I told you my client was on body cam, calling me by name and saying, "Get my lawyer Mark Diaz down here." But he was not, you know, he was very calm. He was rational. He wasn't being rude. In other words, don't escalate the situation. We find this a lot in victim cases where the suspect is no longer at the scene, where the police have been called, and then the officers will either try to call the suspect, or if they do call the suspect and the suspect answers, they try to get him to come in for questioning. Those people call me a lot, and again, my answer is always the same: absolutely not. Call the officer back though and tell him I've spoken to my lawyer Mark Diaz, and he said if you want to interview me, call him. I've never gotten that call because the officers don't want to talk to the lawyer because it's really not going to help their case. I'm not going to let them trap my client, right? You know, the other reason is because depending upon the level of officer that you're dealing with, they've actually gone to school and received training in questioning suspects. So they will intentionally try to trick you up on certain things depending on which interview technique they're using. And the problem is, even if you don't say anything incriminating against yourself, the answers that you give can appear to be deceitful, which then hurts your credibility. All these things are going through the officer's mind, but you don't know it. So you think, you know, you're giving the right answers or the answers they want to hear, but, you know, it's possible that when we play that back, right, because it's usually recorded, if not audio and video, usually at least audio. But today it's more common to have audio and video of any interviews. Anyway, when we play that back, when a prosecutor is looking at it, they point to those little tricks or the stumble ups to make it appear as though you were being dishonest, when that was the intent the whole time, was to ask you questions to get you confused, to get you fuzzy, so that you're unclear. Well, this in their mind translates to unreliability. So, and that's the other thing that you always need to keep into consideration is your encounter with these officers is likely being recorded. Either on body cam if it's out in the field. If you've made it into an office, there's usually a camera in that office, even if you don't see it. And so that's why I said, when you invoke your right to counsel, or you let the officers know that you wish to exercise your right to remain silent, that you do it respectfully, because if you're on video looking like a jerk, then it's a problem for me in court, or it can be. So it's important to remain respectful and just invoke your right to counsel and tell them you don't want to answer any questions without your lawyer present. I've been licensed since 1998, and I can't recall ever having sat in on an interview with my client as a suspect. I just can't think of a situation where that would be a good idea. We have other ways to deal with pending charges, including maybe doing a grand jury presentation. So, and again, the problem is the officer who's interviewing you, and if you've gotten to that point, we're probably talking about a felony. It's not even going to be his decision whether or not to effect charges or get a warrant for your arrest. It's going to be up to some district attorney who the officer gives his report to, or tells him the fact scenario for that district attorney to then make a determination whether or not they want to accept charges against you. So again, a lot of people have this natural response that they think, oh, I can talk my way out of this. You're not going to be able to. You're going to talk your way into a charge most of the time. at the very least, you're going to talk me as your attorney into trying to defend whatever story you put out there, which is not a good position either. As the defense attorney, I want to be able to control the narrative if we get to court, right? And if you've already locked me into a position, then that's harder for me to do, because just like the officer's trained to trick you in interrogation, you know, I've spent 20 plus years defending cases, and so I like to make the decision of what our defense strategy is going to be. Obviously, I don't want you to have locked me into a strategy that I know may not work. So, you know, those are all obvious reasons not to talk to the police. I don't have any questions. This was the topic that I had a couple of questions on this week, and so I thought we would talk about not talking to the police and exercising your right to remain silent. If y'all think of anything, email me, and I'll be happy to try to answer that. But that's all I got for today, so y'all have a good rest of your week.